Welcome to European Parliament here in Brussels to the Connect.Euranet monthly chat show. Today we're going to talk about the Erasmus mobility programme because it is, of course, celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. So what a better thing to celebrate than the Erasmus, a programme that's brought over 2.2 million people from all the EU to various different countries to work and study abroad. So joining me here today to do this is Xavier Prats Monné. He's the Deputy Director General for the DG Education and Culture. So basically you work 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 every day on education, training, and your special topic is Erasmus.
Absolutely, a little bit more than 9 to 5, but yes, that's the topic.
A little bit more than 9 to 5. And did you have the opportunity to do it yourself, or did it exist when you were a student?
Oh, well, I am old enough not to be able to benefit of Erasmus as a student, but I have a daughter that benefits from Erasmus, yes.
Well, one man who I read about the other day who's a major advocate of Erasmus is Umberto Eco. He's the Italian philosopher and novelist. And I just had to, when I read this article, I just had to bring it along and use this quote to just start the debate and set the scene. According to him, the Erasmus idea should be compulsory, not just for students, but also for taxi drivers, plumbers and other workers. By this I mean that they need to spend time in other countries with the European Union. They should integrate. So I think that's a nice way to start off and kick off this debate that we're going to have about Erasmus. We have 3 lovely students from all over the European Union who are here with us from the Connect.Euranet network to participate in this. But first we're going to hear a little audio clip just to set the scene even more.
Akademickie Radio Campus 97,1 FM.
I heard about Erasmus. I didn't go for an Erasmus in my life, so I don't know in touch what it looks like. But I know that my friends did Erasmus. If I have an opportunity now, I think that it might be good for me.
I think that studying abroad is a great idea. You can improve your language skills very fast, get to know another country and its culture. It could be a great experience.
I think it's a great opportunity for everyone to meet new people, to practice your language with native speakers and to see your major or your subject from a different point of view.
I think this is a great idea to go abroad for a study and to understand the world more widely. Currently, after the studies, I know people from all around the world, from Pakistan, India, New Zealand, Australia, all the ethnic origins, all the religions. This is a fantastic opportunity.
I would rather not take part in Erasmus program because I have a nice job here and I don't want to quit it. I've also heard from my friends that the scholarship is sometimes not enough.
I heard about Erasmus, but I didn't try to participate because of the financial terms. I'm working and I don't have any extra money. And also I heard some stuff about bureaucracy.
I would rather not go for Erasmus scholarship because I'm in a relationship right now. And I have really nice job, so I have too much to lose.
Akademickie Radio Campus 97,1 FM.
So just can I find out in the audience here who has been on Erasmus? Okay, so kind of half-half. Okay, with that we're going to introduce our guests that are in the table with us today. I have Andrea Stajkuc.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fine.
Happy to be here in the European Parliament?
Very.
I'm just going to tell everyone a bit about you. You're from Romania. You're 21 years old, studying journalism at UBB University in Cluj. You're a reporter for the UBB radio for the last few months, and you're very interested in European problems.
Yes. I took part different debates on this subject, and I think journalist, it's very important to know much than your public and to achieve information more than...
And have you been on Erasmus yourself, or have many of your friends been on it?
No, I hadn't, but I don't know what the future brings. In Romania, I have a lot of friends who already enjoyed the Erasmus experience, and they said that it was a great chance to know people, and maybe I can enjoy the Erasmus experience in the future.
Okay, well, you're very welcome today. Beside you, we have Abir Al-Azir. I'm sure I pronounced that wrong, so I do excuse myself. 22, from Germany, from Bonn Campus Radio. You're studying English and German literature at the University of Bonn, and you're working as Deputy Chief Editor for the online page, and you're also writing news. And you said you love Brussels because it's so multicultural.
Yes.
Bonn is too dull.
Bonn is also very multicultural, but Brussels is even more, so I enjoy it.
Okay, and have you been on Erasmus? If you like multiculturalism, you would love Erasmus.
Yes, I like it, but I've not been yet because I would prefer to go for a longer period of time, so maybe when I finished my studies.
Okay, and have many of your friends been on Erasmus?
Yes, many.
Okay. So you don't dislike it totally. Okay, and opposite you have Carolina Verens from Radio Campus 97.1, University of Warsaw. You're very welcome. It's not your first time. You've been around the Connect.Euranet debate before, so you're used to it.
Wait, I'm getting used to it.
You're a professional. So you're 22, studying applied linguistics with English and German. You love working with people and listening to other people's stories. So that's probably why you're doing so many documentaries and reportages at the moment. Another little secret about you love music and singing.
That's true.
So maybe we might even get a song today.
Maybe.
But anyway, enough of me. I'm going to pass it on to the guests now to ask, or the students to ask our guests here from the European Commission some tough questions about why not everyone can get to go on Erasmus and why is it still just privileged middle-aged people who get to go. So you can start.
Okay, my question is, how will you predict the next 25 years of Erasmus are going to be like, taking in consideration that yesterday Erasmus celebrated 25 years since it's been founded?
Well, we are much better at predicting the past and the future, and it's really very, very difficult to know what's going to be our world, not to mention Erasmus in 25 years. But what is, I think, pretty sure is that over the next 25 years, we will need our young people to be more citizens of the world rather than less. So I really hope that in 25 years' time, we will have more Erasmuses or something like that than we have now. I think, however, that we will have still probably the same problem we have now, which is that whatever we do, it won't be enough. Imagine if we wanted to give an Erasmus scholarship next year, or a Leonardo scholarship, which is the same thing for vocational training, to every young person in Europe, we would need 200 billion euro. So unless Umberto Eco becomes the finance minister of Europe, and unfortunately it's not going to happen, I am afraid, we will have less than we need. And that's why it's so important that if what we do is going to be a drop in the sea, it really should be the right drop. And both the organizers and the beneficiaries and the students that go to Erasmus must know that it is a privilege and an opportunity, and they should grasp it.
Absolutely. And before we go on to Abir's question, or your follow-up question, I would like to, of course, welcome our audience. I totally forgot about our lovely audience from the European Youth Forum and from EX, so journalism students who are on a European Masters, a 2-year course here in Brussels. They will have some questions as well. You're more than welcome to join or put your hand up whenever you like. We also have people watching us on Facebook or on our website, Connect.Euranet.eu. You, of course, are welcome to ask questions as well, and we will get around to them at one stage. I've got the Facebook connection live here, so you're more than welcome to answer questions. So did you have a follow-up, or will we pass it on to Abir? Did you want to ask something else?
No.
Okay. So I've already heard of the Erasmus Mundus program, but it seemed to me somehow that it might be more difficult for students to go to an Eastern country, maybe to the Middle East, for example. Is it really more difficult, or is there only a lack of information?
Well, now we have indeed something called Erasmus Mundus, which is the same as Erasmus, but for non-EU countries. What happens with these is that we have fewer compared to what we do within Europe, And one of the main reasons why we have fewer is that they're more expensive, because in order to bring a student from outside Europe into Europe, we must give them more than we give a European student. And even for European students, of course, what Erasmus is still too little, and we don't aim to cover all the expenses just to give an incentive and a complement. Now, so there are fewer, but I think the real change we're trying to aim at, especially with the new program Erasmus for All, is to make sure that there is no difference between applying to an Erasmus within Europe or outside Europe. Why? Because as concerns university education and high-level vocational training, the University, say, of Sao Paulo, the University of Warsaw, or the University of Singapore, and the students of that university want to be treated as equals and should be treated as equals. So our plan for Erasmus for All is that there will be just one simple procedure for cooperation between students and universities across the world. However, we will also continue to give a priority to European students for obvious reasons. Erasmus is a European program. But we do hope to be able to do more with more people also outside the EU. A different story is the evolution of the stability and the role of education in Middle East countries. And we know how important it will be to make sure that we give a future to the young people of those countries. But that future for, say, Egypt, Morocco, Jordan, has to be through economic growth mainly, also through mobility, but mostly through economic growth. So our challenge as Europe is to help these countries help themselves into economic growth, and mobility must play a part, but only one part of that.
Okay, and speaking of countries outside of the EU taking part in Erasmus exchange, I would like to ask you about the Eastern Partnership countries, which are also to be included in the extended Erasmus program. So do you think that it will be easy for the European Union to extend Erasmus now that the countries, some of the countries of the Eastern Partnership have been, in a way, condemned for its political situation? I mean, Belarus and Ukraine.
Yes, I think that there's an important issue here. There's two things. First, when we look at what are the priorities for the Union with the rest of the world, the neighborhood area, so the Eastern and Mediterranean partners, are clearly and unequivocally our priority. And this should be reflected also in our programs such as Erasmus. So when we look at what we do with non-EU countries, our first attention, our first priority, financially and politically, should be with these countries. A very different issue is to what extent we have to reflect in our programs the difficulties or the sanctions even that the Union may have with a non-European country. And this is not about Erasmus, this is about the way the Europe behaves and the Europe treats its partners when they are not fully democratic. I think that there's no straightforward answer to this, simply because you have to see on a case-by-case basis. And here, what I would like to stress is that there is no simple way to address this. On the one hand, you want to make sure that Europe makes clear that it does not want to cooperate with a regime that is not respecting human rights and democratic principles. On the other hand, you want to make sure that the population of these countries are not penalized in the first place for what the Union does. So there is no straightforward answer. My feeling is that the purpose of Erasmus is precisely to strengthen tolerance and cooperation between peoples. So to put it one way, the last thing one should interrupt is cooperation with programs like Erasmus.
Are there any plans for the nearest future?
It depends about?
Any plans for the nearest future concerning the Eastern Partnership countries and Erasmus?
No, what we are doing is we have a concern now, which is that in order to manage the Erasmus program and the future Erasmus for All program, which is broader than university cooperation, you need a strong administration on the ground. And in order to make sure that countries outside Europe, and actually some of the EU countries when they come in, are capable of managing the procedures, which are sometimes complex, of the program, they have to have the capacity for it. So for us, the priority now is to make sure that as we prepare for a stronger program for the future, we help the Eastern Partnership countries to make sure they can actually manage the complexity of our programs. That's our main concern.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a question here on Facebook from Angela Chambers-Jenkins. She's a master's student in Ubrero in a university in Sweden, part of the Connect.Euranet network. She wants to know specifically about the Erasmus for All programme, and she wants to know how it will help create a modernised education and training system in Europe.
Yes, that's actually a really important and difficult question, because you see, if we agree that whatever we do with Erasmus is not going to be enough, we must make sure that what we do, we have an impact. And the impact must be indeed in helping modernize education and training systems. How do we do that? Well, it's complex, but let me mention two main areas. First, I think in the future we must look not just at the mobility of students, but also, we do already, but we should do it more, the mobility of professors and staff. Because we know from policy evidence that one of the key factors for the modernization of education systems and institutions is the quality of teaching, the quality of staff, the quality of management. Therefore, an exchange of best practice and experiences between people who actually work in universities, teach in universities, is critical. The other very important point is that we would like to make sure that we stimulate with Erasmus for All cooperation between education institutions. Consortia, for example. To give you an example, the London School of Economics and Sciences Po in Paris have a joint dual degree. These sort of things are the ones that Europe should be supporting. Let's say, a better cooperation between institutions when it comes to developing curricula that are closer to entrepreneurship, for example. These are the sort of things we should be promoting, and this is what Erasmus for All will aim at. I think it's also important that when we ensure that many, many students travel, it is also important, just as important that they travel, that there is a clear link between the Erasmus mobility of students and the strategy for internationalization and modernization of their university. To put it simply, we would like to know not just how many students will go somewhere, but why they go there. What is the university going to do when they come back? How will they join again their curricula? Are the students directed towards those disciplines where the university needs to improve more? Is there, for example, a cooperation strategy between the receiving and the sending university? All these things today are actually already there in principle in what is called the Erasmus Charter, that every university that participates in the program signs up to. But we want to make sure that this is more effective and that this has actual concrete commitments to outcomes. Let me mention, one very small point to answer Angela's question. We cannot tell countries what they should do in university education, but we can and should tell them how they're doing. So one important contribution of Erasmus to higher education modernization is, for example, a multi-ranking system to give parents and students the possibility of having a better idea of how a university is performing, the quality of their teachers, the employability of their graduates. This is the sort of things we can do.
And just moving away from people in higher education, I know there's talk of Erasmus for entrepreneurs, for example, Erasmus for journalists, for example, but what about ECO's vision for Erasmus for plumbers and taxi drivers?
Yes. Well, Erasmus is such a brand name that everybody wants to use it.
It's a success story.
Yes, but it has two connotations. One is mobility, and that's why entrepreneurships and taxi drivers and so on. But the other is education, and I think we should really make sure that the two go together. This is why we have put under the word Erasmus for All everything we do for education, training and youth, and not more. I think as concerns taxi drivers, I think Umberto Eco, who is an extraordinary intellectual, what he meant is the importance of people knowing each other for tolerance. I don't think he meant literally that the union...
Think he meant like Brussels taxi drivers would move to Dublin and just kind of swap lives and families. No. Yeah. I think it's time for the audience to ask a question. Is there anyone brave enough to go for the first one? Yeah? Just introduce yourself and tell us where you're from, please.
Hello.
Oh, you're one of the prize winners.
I'm Romanian. I'm studying in France and I've done my Erasmus in Sweden. And I've been really happy with the welcome that I had in the Swedish university. And I was wondering if you're having in your plans also some support for the university which are also having all these Erasmus students, because they have sometimes a huge gestion and a huge management to do. So did you think about that? Yes. The short answer is that we really trust
sweet to be nice as they've been with you. More seriously, though, we can help universities in our support for cooperation, including to improve their management capacity and their capacity to receive students. But the bottom line is that Erasmus has relatively modest aims. We want to provide an incentive for the mobility of students and for universities to establish joint curricula and joint cooperation. We know, of course, that many universities have financial problems, but we cannot take upon our shoulders more than we can. So the short answer to your question is that as concerns being able to receive Erasmus students, universities must make sure that they can do this. But, in most cases, universities do have that. And actually, it is in their interest to spend time, money, and energy in organizing themselves to be more international. Actually, this is perhaps also one way to look at the future in 25 years. I don't know what will be the future, but certainly the composition of students and professors of European universities will be more international in 25 years than is now, hopefully. That's why we call them universities and not particularities.
Okay, could you tell me how much will increase the Erasmus grant, and if this increase will happen also in countries where the grant is already higher?
Okay, there's two things here. One is, first, how many people we will try to help. If our budget is approved, which remains to be seen because we made a proposal, but it is the countries and the parliament that have to decide. If our proposal was to be approved as is, our assessment is that we'll be able to move 2.2 million Erasmus students in 7 years. A different story, of course, and these numbers may change according to the balance we find between the number of students and the amount of each individual grant. And on this, there is not, and there should not be, a final answer, either from the start or in time. Why? Because there is no final answer as to the balance between giving more people the opportunity of a small grant or fewer people, but with a bigger help. I think that we will never reach a perfect solution. In my view, the purpose of Erasmus is not to give a full scholarship. So we should try to aim to help as many people as possible and give them an incentive. The other issue is the quantity of the grant, which can change depending on countries. And this is something which, in my view, we should leave for the discussions with the countries year by year to see how things change. For example, I am not sure that even if we knew what is the ideal grant today, we could apply these to 2018, which is when the program will still be there. So, in other words, I think that it is a matter of still, judgment that we will still have to leave open what will be the balance between giving more to fewer people or less to more. I think that one very important thing to bear in mind, and it can be very frustrating, at least for me personally, is to never forget that precisely because you don't have enough money, you have to focus on what is most cost effective, which is perhaps not always what you would do first. I mean, intuitively, you want to help people that are disadvantaged, for example. But if you find out that by focusing too much on the disadvantage, you help very, very few people, whereas if you give, for example, a prize or an incentive for people to make an effort of their own, you help more, then the balance may change. But this is not an easy question to answer.
Abir had a question on that exact note. Yes. Do you want to kind of elaborate a little bit?
Well, I think he answered it mostly, but I wanted to ask, since Erasmus is mostly geared towards people who do have access to higher education or to training, so wouldn't it be important to have such programs also for socially disadvantaged groups, for example, the Roma people or immigrants?
Yes. Yes, well, indeed, for disadvantaged people, the main thing to do for Europe is to contribute, modestly, but to contribute to reduce their disadvantage. And this is something that is not done through mobility, but through better opportunities. The best thing we can do for Roma children is to provide funds for building better schools and funds for having teachers in place in their country of origin. In other words, it is a matter of priorities here. And for that, we have what we call today the structural funds. So the regional fund for infrastructure, the social fund for training and education, which is mostly focused to non-university people. So what I'm trying to say is that what we can do for disadvantaged to have an impact is mostly within each country, with national funds topped up by European funds. Now, mobility should come into it. If it is about let's say, the educational levels, certainly we should not have programs just for higher education. Just like now, we have a program for adults, we have a program for schools, a program for vocational training, and a program for non-formal youth education. We have brought all these together into Erasmus for All in the future. But again, this is something where we have to make sure, and there is a specific objective in the new Erasmus for All regulation to give priority to the disadvantage. But if your question is, how do we solve the problem of the Roma and the problem of, for example, the 7.5 million young people who are not in training, not in education, and not in a job, which is the real drama, well, then it is not through mobility or through Erasmus.
It's just quite brave calling it Erasmus for All, because that would suggest that every single person would get the opportunity. Yes. Anyway, we have a question from the audience. Yeah, just introduce yourself.
My name is Carolina, and I'm studying at the EFEC. And I had a question that, how is going to put in place practically the Erasmus for All, and what is the difference between the two Erasmus programs, and also how much money is put it in on the table for the program.
Yes, thank you. Well, it is about money in the end. And our proposal is to have 19.5 billion euro over the 7 years from 2014 to 2020. It's difficult to make a comparison with now because, as I said, we put together the current programs and what we do with Erasmus Mundus with other countries, plus Youth in Action. But to give you a ballpark figure, our proposal represents a 70% increase. Now, this is important because the overall budget proposal for the 7 years that the Commission has made doesn't increase at all, for obvious reasons, because countries are cutting their budgets. We cannot just start spending like that. But the Commission has made an effort to rebalance within a very flat budget its priorities and to give a top priority to education. This 70% is the highest increase in all the chapters of the budget. A very different question is, will this be approved in the end? As I said, it's for countries and Parliament to decide. If you wish, my argument is, let's not discuss what is the overall budget for the EU for the future. That's in any case outside my competence. But let's discuss whatever the overall budget, do we want more or less for education? And I think put in those terms, for me the answer is obvious, we want more. But that question remains still open. I realized from your question that there is a little bit of a danger of confusion between the Erasmus we have now and Erasmus for All. You said it yourself, Erasmus is a very sexy name. And therefore it's a brand that is recognized by people beyond those who have benefited from Erasmus. So we wanted to use that brand. And therefore, we call the program Erasmus for All, meaning this is not just about higher education. I know, and many people have felt this very strongly, that there are other programs now that somehow disappear. Our feeling is that the brand name is not for those who benefit from the program today or tomorrow, but for people who don't know about what Europe can do for them, that should know about it. And we felt that the best way is to have a program called Erasmus for All, meaning everybody can move and learn with the help of the European Union. The difference between Erasmus and Erasmus for All, therefore, is very big. Erasmus today is for mobility and cooperation at university and higher education vocational training level only. Erasmus for All is a program that will be comprising everything we do for mobility of students, learners at all levels of education.
Okay, we're going to have to finish up fairly soon. I see there's lots of hands going up now, so I don't know who's got the most interesting question. Who can shout the loudest? Because we will have another debate now in a few minutes with 4 MEPs to find a bit more out about this and about Europe.
Gizem Karslı from an EU country. Turkey, and I'm a representative of European Students Forum. So I have myself also been Erasmus, enjoyed Erasmus, and I'm also a youth work. I'm an NGO worker, and then we really do appreciate the new Erasmus for All program. But unfortunately, we have realized that Erasmus for All program is leaving aside the role of the youth organizations. As I said, I enjoyed Erasmus as well, but I have to say, I learned a lot more about European integration, European values in the organization that I'm working. Because the schools, all the educational problems, you are taught there. But you learn as a youth worker, you learn through NGOs. So I am really curious about how the Erasmus for All program will compensate the lack of youth organizations. Thank you.
Please allow me some time to answer this because it is really a very important question. There is now a program, for those who are not familiar with it, called Youth in Action, which is precisely, as you imply, for the mobility and cooperation of young people outside formal education. It's a program of its own, very visible and indeed extremely useful. We have actually included the objectives, the aims, and the actions of that program into Erasmus for All. For example, European Volunteer Service, the possibility for young people to volunteer in another country, exchange of young people. Also, we have included for only 3 institutions EU support for their functioning: the College of Europe, the European Institute in Florence, and the European Youth Forum, which is a European-level organization for non-formal youth education. So we feel that we have really made a big effort to include the aims and objectives and instruments of the program for non-formal learning into Erasmus for All. The reason for doing this is twofold. First, we feel that we will give a better chance, not less of a chance, to young people active in youth organizations to influence everything we do for youth, not just non-formal youth. And because people in reality, I mean, a European Erasmus student should also be able to do after that a volunteer work without having 2 separate programs. Also in terms of management, there is a big effort on the part of the Commission requested by our countries to reduce the number of legal instruments and different funds. I believe, really, I feel very strongly that by having Youth in Action into Erasmus for All, we are ensuring the survival of assistance to young volunteers, to non-formal youth, much more than if we try to have a separate little program that might easily be swept away in the big discussion about money. I realize that many youth organizations see their visibility in Youth in Action now. I am really confident that these people who do great work will be able to find themselves, to find a space also in Erasmus for All. Let me give you, since it is about the money, let me give you an example of what we try to do to guarantee the future of non-formal education. We have, in the current rules, there is a minimum guaranteed for every sector, for vocational training, higher education, and so on. It's just a minimum. Everybody gets more. We have translated with the right amounts that minimum into Erasmus for All. For youth organizations, there is no minimum. So what have we done? We have taken as a minimum the maximum, meaning the average that Youth in Action has today for non-formal youth every year, and put it as the minimum starting in 2014. So we really believe that the tools are there to make sure that what you say, which I fully agree with, can still happen in the future, which is that people benefit from Europe when they are in formal education, as you were in Erasmus, and when they are working for an NGO, working for young people. I think that this is, at least this is the rationale, and we feel very strongly that this was the right way. We worked on this very hard for many months. We may be wrong. We may be wrong. This is why our proposal we took as a starting point, not at the end, and I'm really sure that we will get an understanding, as long as we understand and we agree on 2 very important things, that the objective of our programs, Erasmus or youth or anything, is not to do good things for the people who benefit from them, but to make sure that the euro spent at EU level is better spent than the euro spent at national level or not spent at all. Believe me, this is critical for the people who will decide on the money in the end, who are not people who work on youth or education. They are finance ministers who will look at the budget in this way. We must make sure we prove that. So cost effectiveness, good management are words that sound cold and technocratic, but we can't forget about that, because whether we like it or not, these are the criteria in the end. So I'm pretty sure that we will manage to show that we have a program that offers value for money.
Xavier Prats Monné, you've been very generous with your time. I'm sure you're dying for a glass of water. Thank you very much for coming along. On behalf of the DG Education and Culture, on behalf of Andrula Vasiliou's cabinet. And thank you, girls. You won't be going anywhere. Oh, you will actually. Sorry, excuse me. There's 4 MEPs that will come now. So anyone who didn't get to ask their questions, you can ask them now in the next debate. Well, you 3 will be back, along with Robin, another guy in the audience who'll be here for a debate with Chris Riley after the next debate. So thank you again very much for coming. And everyone on Facebook, thanks for watching. If we didn't get to your questions, we will get to them on the next half an hour. See you in a few minutes.
Thank you.